In this video, we're going to continue our study of discrete probability distributions by taking a look at variance and standard deviation. Now, again, there is what looks like a complicated formula for calculating each of these things. Now, we have calculated variance and standard deviation before, so we're familiar with the basic idea. Again, we're going to use Excel to find all of these values for us, but essentially what we're going to do is we're going to find the variance by finding each value's deviation from the mean and squaring it, again, so that it's positive. And then we're going to multiply that by the probability. And then we're going to do that for each of the x values, and then we're going to add them up. And then we're simply going to take the square root of it to find the standard deviation. We're going to look at that same question that we did in our last video about Peyton's decision about which investment is right for her. And we had determined that the expected value, which is what we would expect to earn from investment A, was $24.50, and the expected value of B was $322. So we decided that this was definitely the way to go. Now let's talk about the standard deviation and the variance. So notice I already kind of have my spreadsheet set up. So if you need to take a moment to pause this video and set up your spreadsheet in the same way, feel free to do that. But what we're going to do is, remember, this is what we're trying to get to. We're going to take each value minus the mean, and then we're going to multiply or square it, and then we're going to multiply that by the probability. So we're just going to take our time in finding each of these values. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my x value minus my expected value. And I'm going to show you a little trick in Excel. If I have it just like this, obviously it's going to calculate it correctly here. But if I copy that down, I want you to notice that, yes, it's going to change this to A4 and A5 and A6 and A7, but also the B value changed. But I don't want the B value to change. I want to continue using the mean. So I could just keep typing it over and over, or I can use a $sign on the B. Now, why would that help? Because now if I copy it down, it's going to keep the B and the 9. So yay. And now I'm simply going to take the value that I just calculated and square it. And I don't need to use any $signs here because I want the value to continue to change. So notice this is C6, this is C7, and so forth. Now what do I want to do? I want to take this value that I just calculated, and I'm going to multiply it by the probability. And again, I want the value to continue to change, so I don't need the $sign. Now, to find the variance, I'm simply going to take the sum of these values. So that's a huge variance. And then to find the standard deviation, I'm going to take the square root of the variance. And then I'm going to do the exact same thing here. So I'm going to say equals, and then x minus, and I'm going to choose the new mean. And just as I did before, I'm going to put the $sign on the B and the 21, so that B21 continues to be the value that is subtracted. Then I'm going to take this value and square it. And then I'm going to take this value times the probability. The variance is simply the sum of all of those values. And the standard deviation is the square root of the variance. So what does this tell us? Well, again, if you would like, you can format the cells and say that this is currency, because that's what it is. I'm going to do the same thing here. Format cells, and then choose currency. And I can see that the standard deviation for earning, or for plan A, is 869.32, and for B is 863.15. Now, for me, that's not a big enough difference to help me make a decision. So rule of thumb here is the first thing that you're going to look at is the mean. Now let's say I happen to have a mean that was the same, and then I look at the standard deviation and say, okay, well, this one's a little bit less risky because there's a little bit less spread involved. This is a little bit more risky. But honestly, the difference between the two is not significant enough for me to help me make my decision. Now that we are familiar with the discrete probability distribution, we want to look at a few special distributions. So the next one we're going to look at is the binomial distribution.